Alright, we should be live. We should have been live before. I've been talking for like 15 minutes now. And apparently, when I clicked start streaming, OBS was like, I don't know if he means it. Thanks, OBS. Thanks for that. I already have to talk about 174 cards. You're killing me. Hi, I'm Saber. This is my deck building stream for Terra, Magical Adept, from the Final Fantasy set. We are working on a commander deck based around Terra, and I just did all of this, and now we're gonna do it again. Isn't this fun? Alright. Enough complaining. So, Terra, Magical Adept. 1 red green, 4/2, Human Wizard Warrior. Terra enters, you mill 5 cards. You can put up to 1 enchantment milled this way into your hand. She also transforms, so 4 red green and tap, exile Terra, then return her to the battlefield transformed. Activate only as a sorcery. Like all the other characters that have this particular method of transformation, she is in fact a saga on the other side because she's part Esper, and Esper Terra is a 6/6 flying saga wizard, and her first 3 chapters are all the same. You create a token that's a copy of target non-legendary enchantment you control. That token gains haste. If it's a saga, you can put up to 3 lore counters on it, and then at the beginning of your end step, if it's still in play, you sacrifice that enchantment. And then if you make it to chapter 4, she adds 2 mana of each color, and then she exiles herself and returns to the battlefield face up. Since she exiled herself and came back face up, if you can't give her haste, you cannot transform her again. So, the entire deck is going to be built around these 3 chapters. The goal is to create a non-legendary copy of Terra, and then use that non-legendary copy of Terra's first chapter to target itself and start making copies. The first one that we make, we want to have come in just on the first chapter a lot of the time. And the reason for this is the combo that kills the opponent by making infinite creatures. If they somehow survive, despite all of the things I'm going to put in here to help make sure that they don't survive just because they can't take combat damage or something silly like that, we should still be able to kill them that turn, but just in case they survive, you want the first non-legendary copy that's not going to explode at end of turn to still be there on the next turn, so that way it can go to chapter 2 and trigger the entire combo all over again. So that is our goal with Terra. To that end, we have 174 spells on the list. I'm going to go over all of them, including all the ones I've already gone over, very briefly, but it's still 174 cards, so get ready, this is going to take a little bit. Alright, first up is Animate Dead. So Terra mills, and then she gets back an enchantment. We have a lot of cards that we would want to be able to get back from the graveyard, including multiple creatures that can clone Terra and be non-legendary copies of her, like Spark Double and Autumn Soldier. So having a way to get back one of those if they get milled by Terra is super helpful, and she can even grab back the Animate Dead if she mills that at the same time. So, Demonic Tutor, best tutor. So this is another thing I went over before, and we do need to go over again. So Terra is insanely mana hungry. We don't want her just randomly dying while we're setting up. Now, we can flip her on an earlier turn to get value out of her flip, and then potentially go off on a subsequent turn, but she is capable of going off entirely in the same turn, but it takes double-digit mana to pull this off. So she can, like, you can potentially cast her and flip her in the same turn and copy her and combo off all at once. That's a lot of mana. That's 9 mana just to get her into play and flip her, assuming that the thing that's giving her haste doesn't cost any mana, and then we need the copy effect. So we have a lot of mana ramp in both artifacts and land fetching. So we have Mana Vault, we have Soul Ring. Our removal comes in 2 different styles. One is incredibly mana efficient, like Swords to Plowshares, and the other is incredibly versatile. We favor versatile, but you do need some cheap interaction, so Swords and Path are on the list. Go past all of our dual lands. Don't worry if you don't have the actual dual lands, you don't need them specifically. I have them, and they're very important to my mana base because of that. But if you don't have them and your playgroup isn't either they don't allow proxies and they don't have them either, that's fine. If they do allow proxies, go nuts with adding in the dual lands to help you out a little bit. But it's just about keeping her at the power level that I'm expecting to play against. So because she's an infinite combo deck, I am expecting her to be a tier 4. Also, I'm pretty sure I'm just loaded up with game changers at this point, so she kind of can't go any lower. Counter spells also come in two varieties. Mana Drain is the only one that's double blue. The rest of them, they can be cast for double blue in some cases, but they can also be cast for less than that. The goal is that I should not have too many counter spells that I can't cast because of my mana base. The deck is insanely mana intensive. I don't need my second blue mana to also be my third green when I need a bunch of green to cast and flip Terra and do other stuff all in the same turn. So, aside from Mana Drain, which can get me more mana on later turns, we're avoiding double blue unless there's an alternate casting cost. Belwar Stone for ramp, Nature's Lure for ramp. Arcane Denial only has one blue in it. Force of Will can be cast for a blue card from my hand instead to ease the mana restrictions a bit. Limdul's Vault is a very efficient way to dig for a specific combo piece. You look at your top 5, you can pay a life to look at the next 5 and keep going. Once you decide on a set of 5 that you like, you shuffle the rest, then put those 5 on top of your library in any order. Enlightened Tutor to grab things like Helm of the Host. Worldly Tutor to grab things like Spark Double. Vampiric Tutor to grab anything. The deck does have a sub-theme of trying to strangle the opponent's mana a bit. Aura of Silence is part of that, making their artifacts and enchantments more expensive, and it can be used as a disenchant later. Urtai's Meddling, blue and X. X can be 1. It can't be 0, but X can be 1. Counters the spell. We do have Remand and Reprieve on the list also, because they can be cast for less color-intensive mana and still counter the spell. But for really cheap interaction that's problematic, Teferi's Meddling is actually better, since the thing will be delayed for one full turn at least. Scroll Rack, we have all the fetches and a bunch of tutors, so we have plenty of ways to shuffle the deck. And we need to see a lot of cards in order to find our combo pieces. What else for ramp? Alright, so Argothian Enchantress and all of the Enchantress effects that are in the deck are cast triggers. We don't want to go infinite with Terra and deck ourselves before we actually get to do the cool thing where we win the game. So we need it to be a cast trigger. We can't need to make 100 copies of Terra when we have less than 100 cards left in our deck with one of the Constellation/Eerie draw card effects. Carpet of Flowers, because of the high tier of the deck, I'm expecting a lot of blue combo and control decks to be present for the types of games that we're going to be playing. So Carpet of Flowers is going to be a huge mana ramp, potentially. Warm Power Stone, grant mana. Does that say Worm Power Stone? Worn Power Stone. There we go. For Monolith to ramp. Replenish. So I don't think any of our combo pieces are actually enchantments aside from things like Animate Dead, but we can still run Replenish because we're running a bunch of enchantments. If we don't have enough good enchantments to bring back, like things where I desperately need to bring them back in order to win or to set up the combo, then we might cut it. But Terra does self-mill, and a way to bring back all of our enchantments can be very useful. Thran Dynamo for ramp. Rhystic Study as part of the cutting our opponents off of mana. I do believe that you are supposed to pay for Rhystic Study almost all of the time. It's very narrow corner cases where I'm not paying for Rhystic Study. I do not recommend letting one opponent draw like 10 billion cards. Get some water. Alright, Aura Shards. So, we can get value out of Aura Shards. Terra flipping is a creature coming into play, for example. So, even if we're just flipping her ahead of time in order to set up, it still can kill a thing. But the biggest thing about it is being able to kill any of the artifacts or enchantments that are sitting around that will stop the opponent from dying to our combo, because we're going to make infinite Terras so we can kill literally all of their artifacts and enchantments. So anything that would save them, effects like propaganda that would make it nearly impossible for me to attack, um, other things that would prevent damage to them, for example, so that way, you know, even if I have infinite numbers, they're still not taking damage properly because of their cards, and they'll figure it out on another turn. Yeah, things like that. Like, we don't want. What's that one enchantment where you don't take any damage and you put that many counters on it, and then later on it tries to kill you, but it's okay because you survived the one combo kill, so you just disenchant it yourself. You can take that out ahead of time. Fires of Yavimaya, we need Terra to have haste, and we need her to have haste, preferably for no mana. Like I said, the combo turn is very mana intensive to begin with, so anything that can ease that burden is worth considering. Aladmary's Call to tutor our creatures. Seda Sanctuary. Terra is both red and green, so if she's out with this, I get to draw 2 cards and discard 1 on my upkeep, and that's just seeing more cards. Same with Phyrexian Arena. Pernicious Deed is another catch-all removal spell. Mirari's Wake to ramp us. Enchantress's Presence to draw cards. Future Sight to tear through our deck faster. With all the fetches and things like Scroll Rack, we should have an easier time setting up Future Sight, or at least getting to see new cards constantly. Willbender, we have a couple of different ways to deflect targeted removal away from Terra. That falls in the same category as the counterspells, where the colored mana is not particularly intense, and the total mana cost is not particularly intense either. Gilded Lotus to ramp, Lightning Greaves. So Lightning Greaves, so Terra obviously needs to be targetable in order to get the whole ball rolling, but Lightning Greaves will fall off because she exiles herself and comes back transformed. So if we need to give her haste, Lightning Greaves equips for 0, we activate her ability, Lightning Greaves falls off, and now we can target her with certain effects in order to make the copies to get going, so the Lightning Greaves still on the list. O-Stone is one of my preferred board wiping. I need a reset button cards, so that's on the list. Crucible of Worlds, we're running 10 fetch lands, so being able to pull back a fetch both to shuffle our deck for cards like Future Sight and Scroll Rack and whatnot, but also in order to just be able to fix our mana and set up. Eternal Witness, Terra Self Mills, so we might need to pull something back from the graveyard. Godo Bandit Warlord can tutor for Helm of the Host, and can also go infinite on his own with Helm of the Host, if we're in that position. Like, I don't need to go infinite with Terra specifically, and since he's tutoring up an equipment I need to go infinite with anyway, this gives the opponent the problem where if they can't kill the equipment, they now have 2 different creatures that they need to kill, so Grave Robber is one of my favorite graveyard hate cards, so that's on the list. Sensei's Top, we're doing a lot of shuffling and a lot of looking at cards, so anything that helps me dig deeper to the things that I'm looking for needs to be on the list. Court of Calling to tutor creatures, Farseek to ramp, Privileged Position to protect all of my stuff, make it harder for the opponents to actually deal with what I'm doing. Remand is another counterspell that's easy on the mana base. Teferi, one of several cards I have on the list that is here to stop opponents from being able to interact with our stuff on the turn that we're comboing off. Like, counterspells are super helpful, but not letting them cast their things in the first place, also super helpful. And can ease the mana if we can flash into Teferi first. Coalition Relic for ramp, Mana Reflection for ramp, Glenelendra Archmage. Again, a counterspell that's very easy on the mana. Technically 2 counterspells if I do have double blue available. Alright, Path to Exile we went over already. Sends triplets. So sends triplets can only affect one opponent, but if we affect the opponent that has the grip full of counter spells, then at the very least, we stop that one from being able to interact with us and have access to their counter magic if we need it. Stoneforge Mystic to tutor things like the Helm. Training Grounds to make Terra cheaper to activate. Pretty sure that's supposed to be Beast Within, not East Within. Oh. That's what it was. We missed the B just didn't get typed in the first place. There we go. Figured it out. Again, I need my catch-all removal to kill basically anything, and Beast Within is one of the cheaper ones to do that. And I don't care about the 3/3, because eventually I'm going to go infinite and kill the opponents. Spellskite to deflect things away from Terra. Moon Mist can transform Terra, but it also prevents all combat damage from non-wolf werewolf creatures. So I need to have a different way to kill the opponents other than combat damage. But like I said, I'm planning to be able to do that anyway, to get around opponents that will be able to block combat damage. Like, I want to make sure opponents die through their fog effect, so my fog effect shouldn't matter that much. Cyclonic Rift, another good way to set the opponents back and get rid of all their problematic stuff for a turn or two. Excuse me. Perforos is one of the ways to kill all of our opponents without having to attack them. It is still damage-based, and we do have other things along these lines. But Perforos is one of the ways to kill them very quickly through not being able to deal combat damage to them. And he's indestructible, so he's harder to interact with if we cast him on a setup turn. Karametra helps me ramp my mana, and then later on tears all the land out of my deck. Except for the fetches, and maybe some of the other ones. But we'll get all of my forests and all of my plains on the turn that I go off. Agent of Erebos kills opponents' graveyards and keeps triggering. Normally I limit myself to like one main deck way to deal with graveyards, but Agent of Erebos is just so good at what he does when I'm making infinite enchantments, so. Grim Guardian is another way to just get opponents to lose the game. He doesn't target, he's loss of life, so it gets around a lot of the things they could be using to protect themselves. Crewfix lets us roll our mana over as colorless mana, and we need a ton of mana. So, colorless mana is perfectly fine. Utter End is a catch-all removal spell. Dragonlord Dramoka to stop opponents from casting spells on our turn. Zulaport Cutthroat is another way to drain out the opponents. Zendikar Resurgent to ramp. Anguished Unmaking to kill anything. Disallow... Oh, I do have Disallow. I kind of forgot I did, because this would have been one of the first cards that I added to the list, and I missed it when I was going through to count off all the cards. So yeah, Disallow is one of those cards that I run in most of my decks because it breaks up the combos that get around not being able to counterspell the permanent or the source of the effect. One of my main things is Thassa's Oracle. I genuinely hate seeing games end by that card. And Disallow lets you counter the trigger. So if the opponents manage to go, oh, Moon Mist Village or whatever it's called, so my next spell can't be countered, I've decked myself and here's Thassa's Oracle. Like, yeah, I'm still going to counter the trigger and you've decked yourself, so hopefully that kills you. Immortal Sun makes my spells cheaper and draws me extra cards. We also don't have Planeswalkers on the list, so, or if we do, there's like 1, 2. I think there is, and I'm not even running them for the loyalty abilities. It's actually Little Teferi from War of the Spark to stop opponents from being able to cast things. Eldest Reborn. So I do have a handful of Saga enchantments on the list that generate big value. So that way, if I do flip Terra ahead of time, she has potent things to copy. Because getting to Eldest Reborn here and make everybody sack a creature discard a card, and then I reanimate a creature or planeswalker, especially if I can reanimate Spark Double or Autumn Soldier, is pretty potent. Like, we might actually still combo kill off of this one specifically because of that. Helm of the Host makes the non-legendary copies. Assassin's Trophy is the most efficient catch-all removal spell in Magic at only 2 mana. Biomancer's Familiar is in here to make Terra cheaper, and some of our other creatures' activated abilities. Lavinia stops free spells and spells cast ahead of schedule from our opponents. She is a little dangerous because we do ramp with artifacts, but most of our spells aren't super expensive anyway, so our ramping with artifacts might not necessarily matter. We might still have enough land in play where if somebody stole Lavinia or reanimated it away from us, we would still be able to work underneath her. Because we need a lot of mana to do a whole lot of things, not one big thing. Smothering Tithe to strangle their mana and to give me more mana, if they can't help it. Casualties of War, one of my favorite catch-all removal spells of all time. So there's a couple ways we can make copies of Terra that don't have their counters on them and wouldn't get them. Like, we just turn things in play into Terra instead. So in situations like that, what we need to be able to do is to get another counter onto Terra, so that way she can then copy one of the things that has become a non-legendary copy of her and get the ball rolling that way. The problem is a lot of them are sorceries, so we do need a way to get a counter onto Terra again, now that she's flipped over and we've turned everything into her. Lazotep Plating protects all of my stuff, and gives me a 1/1. It gives me and my other things hexproof until end of turn. Spark Double to copy Terra, Teferi Time Raveler to stop opponents from interacting. Wishclaw Talisman is another very efficient tutor. I almost never run Wishclaw Talisman, but I also don't usually run like combo decks that are this intense with the pieces that they need to assemble. So since we're going to combo kill our opponents anyway, we can probably afford to give away Wishclaw Talisman. Also, we might be able to destroy it after giving it away with some of the other cards in our deck. Elspeth Conquers Death is another potent value saga, and it can also get back a dead creature or planeswalker, so we can use it to get back Autumn Soldier or Spark Double. Heliod's Intervention is one of the most efficient ways to destroy problematic artifacts and enchantments en masse without killing mine. Nyxbloom Ancient severely ramps our mana and is an enchantment, so we can get it back. Bastion of Remembrance is an enchantment that will kill opponents when all of our token copies of Terra expire at end of turn. Mythos of Nethroi is a catch-all removal spell for 3 mana. Ruinous Ultimatum kills all of our opponent's stuff, and similar to Oblivion Stone and Farewell, which we'll get to momentarily, I just need ways to kill all of our opponent's stuff that's problematic for us. Binding of the Old Gods kills anything when it comes in, fetches us a land, and then is a saga that we could theoretically copy with Terra to kill another thing and fetch us another land to help go off on a subsequent turn. So, Pugilist's flip side is Echoing Equation, which is one of the cards that turns everything I control into a non-legendary copy of target creature I control. So, that's one of the ways to make everything else in play Terra that I was talking about that wouldn't actually put a counter on it, and it is a sorcery, so we either need to be able to cast it with Flash or put a counter on Terra after it's resolved in order to combo kill. Wandering Archaic is another thing that can tax the opponent's mana, potentially. It can also be used politically, like, if one of our opponents wants to destroy something another player controls, they can, not pay the 2 and let me also destroy something that they don't control. We'll work it out. Bard class can make Terra cheaper, so that way we can get her down and still have mana left over. Um, it can also let me get extra cards, and it can put counters on Terra, which probably doesn't matter, but it does make her cheaper. Brunner Battlehammer is in here because he can free roll an equipment once per turn to get Helm of the Host onto Terra for free. Delina can make non-legendary copies of Terra. Um, Notably, it's when she attacks, so we do need to have one of the other combo kill pieces like Perforos or Bastion of Remembrance or something like that in play. But she will still kill by making infinite Terras just by attacking. Fighter class makes my equipments cheaper and tutors for Helm of the Host. So, Meat Hook Massacre is actually in here for the enchantment, not for the -X effect. So that way when my creatures die, each opponent loses a life. Fable the Mirror Breaker is in here to help ramp us and to see more cards, and as a thing that Terra can copy. Satsuki, I'm not sure about, but I'm sorry, we skipped over Farewell. Farewell is in here because Farewell is dumb. It's literally the best mass removal spell in the game, so we're running it, even though I dislike it. But Satsuki, the Living Lore, so she can tap at sorcery speed to put a lore counter on each of my sagas, which, again, if I need to suddenly have Terra gain a lore counter after everything has become a copy of her, we might need to do some shenanigans, though, to get Satsuki out with haste. But I do have plenty of ways to do that, so. Tamio Safekeeping, 1 mana, hexproof, indestructible. Save Terra while I'm trying to combo off with her. Kami War is another one of those. It's a saga that gives a ton of value if copied by Terra in the meantime. I don't know how many of these are going to make it all the way through. The ones that can combo kill by bringing back things like Spark Double should definitely make it. I don't know if more value-oriented ones like Kami War are going to be worth it. Offer You Can't Refuse, 1 blue, counters non-creatures. Void Ren destroys anything, can't be countered. Non-land, but still. Elias is another one of those. I can gain infinite life off of things coming in, and my stuff dying deals damage. Terra Sunder, 2 mana to exile an artifact or enchantment, or 4 mana to exile any non-land permanent. Duplimancy, I do have a few things that can target Terra, and I don't care if it kills Terra, is the thing. Like, I can Vindicate Terra and make a non-legendary copy of her, and that works. So Vesuvan Duplimancy is in, but we do have a few ways to do that that don't kill Terra outright. Zur is in here. He gives my enchantments hexproof, or enchantment creatures hexproof, so that makes it so the opponents can't target Flip Terra, or the copies of her, so they need to kill regular Terra. And then can also do some other shenanigans. I don't know if he'll make it all the way through, but he's worth considering. Myrel, Shield of Argive, stops opponents from casting spells on our turn. Sarenth Great Worm gives us tap Power Stones that can be used for activating Terra, casting Helm of the Host, equipping Helm of the Host. Lotho Corrupt Sheriff. Anytime any player double spells, I get a treasure. I do lose a life, but that's negligible. Reprieve, already went over. The One Ring protects me, draws me a bunch of cards. I don't care about my life total as long as I win. There and Back Again is kind of weird. So what There and Back Again does in this deck is it stops one of my opponent's creatures from blocking, whatever, ring tempts me. Then it gets me a mountain, which doesn't have to be a basic, so it can tutor up any of my dual lands. Then it makes Smog, and if Smog dies, I make 14 treasures, and Smog is legendary. So if I make a copy of this thing with Terra, I get a Smog because I can put all 3 saga chapters on it in the one turn, and then eventually the other one will die also and give me 14 extra mana to work with. Don't know if that's going to make it all the way through, but that's the reason why it's on the list. Then we get to Wilds of Eldraine, which is a massive boon for this deck. Let me take another sip of water first. Alright, so all three of these can combo kill. First one is Apprentice's Folly. Chapters 1 and 2 make a non-token copy of a creature I control that doesn't have the same name as one of my tokens. The copy isn't legendary. So, since I'm trying to make copies of Terra, I won't have another copy unless I'm winning the game anyway. So I target Terra with this, and even if it's already in play, like, I can make Terra make a copy of it in order to make another copy of Terra. And once we do that, then Terra can handle making the infinite copies afterwards. 3 blind mice. If we flip Terra and target this, we just make infinite copies of 3 blind mice instead of infinite copies of Terra, which, again, we have things like Perforos, we have, like, it won't help that the creatures don't have haste and aren't going to die at end of turn, but we can make, because we're making infinite copies with Terra, we can make copies of the Saga and the tokens. They're still not going to die at end of... The tokens still don't... the mouse tokens won't die at end of turn still, though. So yeah, that one won't work, but we still do make infinite mouse tokens, and we will still have things that will either kill the opponent that turn, or make them die if they can't exile all of my tokens. Or deal with the one enchantment that's going to kill them if all of my things suddenly died. And finally, Yenna, Redtooth Regent, has 2 tap... Make a copy of target enchantment I control that doesn't have the same name as another permanent I control. Again, same thing, if I haven't comboed off with Terra, she'll be the only one. Except it's a non-legendary copy of it, and if I happen to copy an aura, I can untap this and scry to activate only at sorcery speed. So 3 different ways to copy Terra, or I'm sorry, 2 different ways to copy Terra. One way to go infinite with Terra without it being copies of her, and 2 of them are enchantments. So, thanks, Wilds of Eldraine. Omen Path Journey is an enchantment that can ramp us. Balin of the Hammer, or the Haymaker, rather. So, let's see. Balin can tap 2 of my tokens to add mana, 3 of my tokens to draw a card. So, if for some reason I don't have the win on board, Balin will allow me to draw cards from my deck until I find the thing that I need, and will allow me to make mana so that I can cast the spell even if I've spent all of my mana on other things up until this point. Enduring Vitality allows all of my enchantment, or all of my creatures to tap for mana of any color, and it is an enchantment, and it can die into a non-creature enchantment. Overlord of the Hauntwoods ramps me, and is an enchantment. Inevitable Defeat can kill anything and is difficult to stop. Mysterized Village to blank other counter decks, hopefully. Voice of Victory to stop opponents from casting stuff on my turn. Garnet is on the list because she can remove lore counters, so if I need to value flip Terra, and she's in danger of going off before I've assembled the combo, I can use Garnet to remove counters from her. Also, I have some other sagas that Garnet can eat counters off of. Bahamut's in here for value, similar to the Kami War, and might get cut for the same reason. Same for Primal Odin. We do have Yuna, though, to buy back our enchantments and to make our enchantment creatures more powerful. Of course, we have Terra herself here. Imperial Recruiter can go get Spark Double, and I believe Autumn Soldier is also a base 0/0. I forget now. I have to double check that. Imperial Seal is a worse Vamp Tutor. 3 visits to ramp. Grim Tutor. Grand Abolisher stops opponents from casting spells on our turn. Warstorm Surge is another way to kill the opponents without actually having to turn our creatures sideways. Whenever one of my creatures enters, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. This could also mow down problematic creatures. that can be damaged. Things like Windborn Muse that could be stopping me from winning. Treasonous Ogre helps me ramp. Don't care about my life total. Force of Negation can be cast without spending blue mana. Generous Gift can kill anything. Esper Sentinel taxes the opponent's mana and potentially draws us cards. Garth is on the list because he can conjure a Black Lotus, and that is super helpful for all of my mana requirements, but I might still cut him. He has a few other things he can conjure also that are helpful, but we'll have to see. Profane Tutor. So, this is a tutor that I usually put on the list. The biggest problem with Profane Tutor is actually the amount of time it takes for it to go off, but you never have to worry that what you're getting will become irrelevant because you get to choose when it resolves, not ahead of time. Like, you know, if I don't have a way to draw extra cards at the time and I Imperial Seal, it might not be the card I still need on my turn. At least with Profane Tutor, you're always getting whatever you need at that exact moment. Sanctum Weaver, because we have a lot of enchantments and a lot of mana requirements. Tireless Provisioner can get me a treasure when I landfall. Abstruse Appropriation is just better Utter End. Again, Arcanum Weaver lets me trade in one enchantment in play for another one in my graveyard. Nadir's Nightblade kills my opponents if my tokens are leaving play. So another way to get around opponents not being able to die to combat damage. Vile Duplication makes a non-legendary copy. We do have Scavenger Ooze on the list, just in case I wanted another Graveyard Hate card. We're probably going to run two of them. Scavenging Ooze is my second favorite, but Erebos' Emissary being able to trigger off of enchantments coming into play, especially since I might be able to actually put an enchantment into play at instant speed with some of my cards. Arcane Signet for ramp. Darksteel Mutation is an enchantment that deals with problematic commanders. Conqueror's Flail stops opponents from casting on my turn. Teferi's Protection to stop them from killing my combo pieces or exiling them. Estrid's Invocation is an enchantment that can become a copy of any enchantment and then can switch what it's copying on my upkeep. Windgrace's Judgment kills anything. AC to help me ramp and to see more cards, because it gives me an extra land play each turn and draws me cards when I landfall. Dismantling Wave, so can kill an artifact or enchantment from each opponent, and if I really need to and I have the mana, I can cycle it and kill all artifacts and enchantments. But the fact that it kills one of either permanent type from each player helps a lot. Fierce Guardianship and Deflecting Swat to protect Terra for no mana. Clever Concealment. One of my preferred ways to protect my combos is to have the things phase out, so that way not even Farewell can get them. Cavern Horde Dragon, potentially cheap with haste if opponents have a lot of artifacts, and if they have a lot of artifacts, I might suddenly have a lot of treasures. So helps me ramp against opponents who are ramping really hard with treasure, especially. Unexplained Absence kills one permanent from each opponent, and then they get to cloak the top card, but I don't care about that. Narcy Fable Singer. This one was, when I sack an enchantment, I draw one. When my Saga's final chapter resolves, each opponent loses X and I gain X, where X is the Saga's mana cost. Okay. So, as long as I don't accidentally deck myself from the card draw aspect of sacrificing them at end of turn, I can in fact kill my opponents with the life drain. Ondu Spirit Dancer, the first enchantment I cast each turn, I make a token copy of. That doesn't work with Terra, because A, I'm not casting her as the Saga side, and B, it doesn't make non-legendary copies. But it's an incredibly powerful value engine, and I'm running a whole lot of enchantments in the deck, so. Bolt Bender, similar to Willbender. Redress Fate brings back all of my artifacts and enchantments from my graveyard. Yojimbo is another value summons. It exiles an opponent's artifact, enchantment, or tapped creature on chapter 1. Makes it difficult to attack me. It puts a propaganda effect up. And then I get a treasure for each opponent who has a creature with power 4 or greater. So I can get some extra treasure out of it. Owaka can keep my sagas around by removing counters. Summon Esper Valagarmonda. So this is, I believe it was originally called like Tritaka or something in Final Fantasy VI, but this is the one that is being retrieved on Retrieve the Esper. So it has Flying and Haste. Chapter 1 exiles an instant or sorcery from my graveyard. Chapters 2 through 4 add red mana for each lure counter on it, and I may cast an instant or sorcery exiled with this card, and mana can be spent of any type to cast it. Oh, from each graveyard, not a graveyard. Not my graveyard, right. So I can steal a bunch of spells and cast them, but mostly I can steal my own spells like Irenicus' Duplication and cast it, so. Autumn Soldier is a 0/0, that's what I thought. Becomes a non-legendary copy of it. It has Myriad. Nano Gene Conversion turns all of my creatures into one of my creatures specifically, except they're not legendary. Also a sorcery. And Quantum Misalignment creates a non-legendary token copy of target creature I control and has Rebound. Codsworth can help attach, what's its name? Helm of the Host directly to Terra. Sean, Father of Sense, can make non-legendary copies of Terra. He does have to copy her while she's attacking. So I won't be able to attack with all of the copies, but again, we have ways around that. Exchange of Words from Unfinity is the last card on the list, and what we're going to do is give Terra's text box when she's flipped to a non-legendary thing so that it can target itself and have Terra's text box. Which I believe still works. I have to triple check that one. But I believe it makes... I believe the text box is a copyable value. I have to check on that one, because that's really weird text to begin with. But if it does work that way, then it's great. And that is all of the cards that I'm planning on running with Terra, and we have to obviously cut most of them. We have to cut 114 cards off the list, but that's not bad for a 5-color commander. Sometimes I have like 200 to 300 cards and need to whittle it down. So the fact that we managed to keep Terra, I was very disciplined on my picks. But yeah, so that's going to do it for me for right now. We'll start working on Terra proper with the next stream. But yeah, I'm gonna go take a break now, because it has been a week already. So I was going to work on Terra yesterday originally, but we got a notice from the town that our plants are apparently too tall and obstructing line of sight on the street for traffic, and we're going to get fined if we didn't reduce them in size. And they are not plants that you can just trim. This was a very, very thick set of bushes, so I had to take an axe to them. So I am exhausted. I have horrible blisters. My arms are on fire, and I still have to go to work tonight, so I'm just going to take a break. I think I've earned it. I worked on that all day yesterday and part of this morning, too. So yeah, I'm not doing great, but it's okay, because it's taken care of for right now. I want to take out the entire bush, but the base of it is monstrous compared to all of the heavier set branches from it that I had to go through. And so that's going to be a thing that I work on in the fall when it's cooler. And after I've given my arms like a month or two to heal on top of that, should be able to go out there and take that thing out, but yeah, it's going to do it for me for right now. So, again, hopefully I'll be working on Terra. It's Wednesday. Normally I'm off on Thursday, but we're going to the movies tomorrow, so I might not have time to work on Terra tomorrow, but probably Friday. No, Friday. Friday we'll have the full. Oh God, Friday we will have the full list, and I'll be doing my pre-release prep video that I do for every new set, where I look at the instance spells with flash and wrath effects. I find knowing those specific subsets of cards does the most for helping me not lose games of Magic that I would have won, a month into the set where I've been playing against these cards and I know what they all do. Um, so knowing what the wrath effects and the instance and flash spells are lets me know when I'm supposed to be playing around stuff and what I'm actually playing around, which I think gives you a huge advantage in the early part of the game where people are just figuring out stuff, because people will try just about any card at least once just to make sure. So while it does help to have experienced players give you like a rating on each card, there are way better players for doing that than me. And I'm going to be watching a bunch of them, especially limited resources. But for my experience, knowing specifically, like focusing on what the instance, flash spells, and wraths are, really helps me not get ambushed by stuff. Um, so if that sounds helpful to you, I'll be posting that Friday once it processes. Like once the full list goes live of every card in the set, I will have a breakdown of all of them and go over like what they are, any advice for playing around them. A lot of advice for playing around them does just boil down to, if you know it exists, you don't have to lose to it in situations where you would if you didn't know it was coming. Like, there are some things that you can't help, but if you know your opponent, like, if you look at the board and go, like, let's say we're talking about Final Fantasy. If your opponent has 4 mana available in blue and black, you know that they can have Sephiroth's Intervention and Eject and Ice Magic and like Syncopate for 3, for example. So they could have Vane's Treachery, Overkill. So you know all of the things that they can have, and once you go through all of this list, it's like, okay, so if one of my creatures dies, I still win the game, so they would have to have, like, Ice Magic and Vane's Treachery to kill 2 of my creatures in order for this to not work out for me, so you're safe to attack, versus, it's like, okay, if I all-out attack and they killed one of my creatures, I don't win now, and suddenly blocks are terrible. Like, it sounds simple, but when you don't know what things are in the set at what speeds, like if you thought Sephiroth's Intervention was a sorcery, for example, it's like, okay, so they're in like black-green, their only removal is going to be like Vane's Treachery or Sephiroth's Intervention or Overkill. It's like, okay, well, one of the commons I can't deal with, and one of the commons, if you thought it was a sorcery, you could walk right into it and get killed by it. So knowing what they can do, knowing that there's Ultima in the set, and it can destroy not only your creatures, but your artifacts in a set with a lot of equipment in it, and a bunch of vehicles. Like, that's kind of important to know. Similarly, there's going to be a wrath that kills spaceships in Edge of Eternities, so knowing that your non-animated spaceships aren't safe from that wrath is going to be relevant to you. So it's things like that, and I always find it helps me win a lot more games than I would otherwise by just being able to predict what opponents are capable of doing, and having gone over the list right before the actual pre-release is just one of those things that helps keep it fresh in my mind. So I'll be doing that this Friday and posting it, so that way it'll be available for the full week leading up to the pre-release. So hopefully you'll check that out, and if not, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Have a good rest of your day.